I never believed silence could feel heavy until the night I stayed in the library. After midnight, the kind of silence that makes your chest tighten and your ears strain for the smallest sound. I had been working late on a research project, one that demanded stacks of old books that could only be found in the deepest corners of the university library. And when the final chime of the great-grandfather clock echoed through the hall, I realized everyone else had gone home. The library after dark is not like the library in the day. The bright fluorescent lights replaced by dim amber lamps. The air colder, the shadows stretching longer between the towering shelves. It smelled of dust and brittle pages like history itself was breathing around me. I told myself it was nothing, but as I gathered my notes and slipped deeper into the archive section, I began to hear something. It started faint, just a whisper, like someone turning a page in the next aisle. Oh, but there was no one there. I froze, my pen still in my hand. My breath fogging slightly in the chill. I told myself it was the building settling. But it grew again, a low murmur. More than one voice, soft, layered into distinct. It was like the books themselves were trying to speak. I stepped slowly between the shelves, the lights overhead flickering ever so slightly. The rows seemed endless, each filled with spines of leather cracked with age. My footsteps were swallowed by the carpet, and yet the whispers continued. I leaned close to a shelf of old encyclopedias, listening, and for the briefest moment I swore I heard my own name, called. I spun quickly the aisle behind me, empty, stretching into a vanishing point. The weight of the silence pressing again, but this time it felt alive. I whispered, "Hello," my voice trembling, but only the echo of my own word returned faint as if carried back to me by something hiding out of sight. My heart pounded faster as I walked deeper instead of leaving like any sane person would. I felt pulled, like the voices were luring me onward. The whispers grew louder, filling the air with hushed tones as though dozens of people were speaking at once, just out of comprehension. I passed a row of atlases. The covers warped by time and noticed one book slightly pulled out, as if someone had touched it recently. I reached for it, and as my fingers brushed the spine, the whisper stopped. The silence hit me like a crash, colder, sharper. My ears rang with the absence. I hesitated, pulling the book from the shelf, its cover blank, only a dull black leather. No title, no markings inside the pages were yellows and blank. Every one I turned only empty parchment. I flipped faster, the sound of paper rushing growing frantic until I slammed it shut and placed it back. The whispers started again, louder, more insistent. I stumbled back, nearly knocking into another shelf. My body tense. I forced myself to breathe. I had to get out. I turned toward the main hall, but something was wrong. The path looked unfamiliar, as though the shelves had shifted in my absence. The rows twisted, leading into darkness. I walked quickly one direction, but found myself looping back to the same row of encyclopedias with a book that should not exist. The air thickened, my breath shallow. I felt watched, though no footsteps followed mine. I whispered to myself, "Stay calm, stay calm." But the voices grew clearer, fragments of words slipping through, though none made sense. An endless litany spoken in tongues too old for me to understand. And underneath it all, I kept hearing my name again and again. I broke into a near run, my shoes silent against the carpet, my hand trailing against the shelves to keep from losing my way. The lights flickered stronger. Some aisles plunged into sudden darkness, before sparking dim again, as if the building itself was breathing. I reached a heavy wooden door at the far end, one I had never noticed before, its frame carved with strange patterns like twisting vines or perhaps letters from a forgotten language. The handle was cold iron. It burned against my palm as I pulled it open, the hinges groaning. The voices swelled loud in my ears. I stepped into a room unlike the rest of the library. It was circular-lined floor to ceiling with shelves that curved inward at the top, meeting at a single dark dome. The books here were older, heavier, covered in a dust, so thick it looked like gray skin clinging to their surfaces. At the center stood a lectern, carved of the same wood as the door, and upon it rested another black book, just like the one I had touched earlier. I felt an urge to step closer, my feet moving without my command, the whispers now focused, sharp, as if all speaking directly to me, though still I could not understand their words. I reached the lectern, staring down at the book. It was open, its pages blank, but my name was etched faintly across the parchment, the letters fading in and out as though alive. A chill swept through me deeper than anything I had ever felt before, the kind that gnaws at bone and soul. The whisper closest now, like a breath against my ear, and it said one word, only one word, that froze me in place. Stay. The single word stay lingered in my head like a command, and the air around me vibrated, as if the library itself had drawn breath. I tried to move away, but my legs refused to obey. It was as though the shelves themselves had shifted closer. Boxing me in the dome above groaned faintly, like stone grinding against stone. I forced myself to speak, my voice barely above a whisper. I cannot stay. I need to leave. But the book before me pulsed like a living thing, its blank pages rippling as though stirred by a phantom breeze. The whispers grew more frenzied. Now they overlapped like countless mouths pressed close to my ear, some shrill and some guttural, but all insisting in tones that clawed at my mind. My pulse hammered. I slammed the book shut, hoping to silence them, but the instant I did, the lamps overhead burst one by one, sending shards of glass raining down each pop, echoing like gunshots until only the faint glow of the dome above remained. I staggered back the door I had come through, now gone replaced by yet another wall of shelves, the architecture impossible. The room now completely sealed. I ran my hands along the spines, searching for some seam, some weakness, but the books refused to the shelves, unmoving. My breath quickened, panic rising, and then I felt the floor shift under my feet like an elevator sinking slowly downward. The shelves stretched higher, the dome receding as though I were descending deeper into the earth. The voices dulled to a low chant vibrating in my skull. My body swayed, and I gripped the lectern for balance. Though I wanted nothing more than to let go, the black book quivered as if laughing without sound, and when I dared to look down at its cover, I saw faint letters etching themselves across the leather. Not my name this time, but a phrase returned, "What was taken." I whispered aloud, "What was taken?" The air stirred violently, a blast of cold that sent the dust swirling like a storm. The books on the highest shelves began to rattle, their spines shuddering until one by one they fell to the floor. Yet when they landed, they made no sound, only a spreading pool of darkness, as if ink had spilled across the carpet. That blackness spread tendrils reaching towards me, crawling up the lectern legs and seeping into the book itself. The chant rose louder, no longer whispers, but a roar of countless voices pressed into one. They formed words I could finally understand. "Give it back, give it back, give it back." My ears rang, blood warm at the edges. I shouted, "I do not have it. I do not know what you want." The black book snapped open, its blank pages now filled with frantic handwriting. Words scratched in ink so violently, the paper tore each line, repeating the same sentence. "You took. The voices you took. The voices." A cold realization twisted in me. I had spent weeks in this library compiling research, and there were times I had read books so old they fell apart in my hands. Their words fading into nothing. Was this what they meant? Had I stolen their words by reading them? Had I absorbed what was not mine to keep? I stumbled back, shaking my head. No, I only studied. I never took anything. The room convulsed, the shelves groaning, bending inward, like the walls of a throat. The dome cracked, revealing nothing but void, beyond the darkness above, spilling downward in the tendrils that reached for me. I ran skidding across the floor, but no matter where I turned, the shelves curved endlessly, leading me back to the lectern. The book screaming now, the words twisting into jagged symbols, bleeding across the pages. I clutched my head, my vision blurring the voices, too many to fight, and then suddenly silence, absolute crushing silence, so thick I thought I'd gone deaf. I opened my eyes and the room was gone. I stood once more between the familiar aisles of the archive shelves, silent, unmoving, the amber lamps glowing faint as if nothing had happened. My heart raced. I staggered forward, desperate to leave, to find the exit before the madness began again. But as I moved, I noticed something impossible. The books along the shelves were not silent. They were breathing faint pulses, the spines rising and falling in rhythm like the heaving of lungs. I pressed my hand against one and felt warmth, the unmistakable thrum of a heartbeat. I yanked my hand back, trembling. The whispers started again, faint, then stronger. But now I could understand every word they were speaking, names, hundreds, thousands of names flowing endlessly through the aisles, some familiar, some ancient. And in between the names, one word repeated over and over mine. I broke into a sprint, my legs burning, weaving through the shelves, but they seemed to stretch on forever. Each corner turning into another aisle, each aisle identical. I screamed for help, my voice hollow, my throat raw. But the names kept pouring, whispering, until it felt as though my skull would split apart. Finally, I burst into the main hall, my chest heaving, my eyes wet with tears. The wide space looked unchanged, but the grand clock above the entrance was frozen. Its hands stuck at 1 minute past midnight. No matter how long I stood there, it did not move. Time itself, caught in the grip of whatever had taken hold of this place. I ran to the exit doors, pulling hard at the brass handles, but they would not budge. The glass reflected only darkness beyond, as though the world outside had ceased to exist. I pounded against it until my fists ached, my voice hoarse, screaming for release. The voices behind me swelled again, closer, closer, and with each swell, the temperature dropped until frost crawled across the inside of the glass. I turned slowly, and there at the far end of the hall, I saw the shelves shifting, like waves rolling forward, the aisles collapsing inward. The entire library bending, reshaping, pushing me back toward the archive. I stumbled backward, refusing to go. But the tide of shelves was relentless. The air filled with a scream of wood grinding against stone, the chandeliers above swaying violently. I tripped, falling hard onto the cold tile. The whispers surrounding me, drowning me, and then the black book slid across the floor, stopping inches from my hand, as if pushed by unseen fingers. Its cover glowing faintly, the words return. What was taken carved deep into its surface. I realized then the only way out might be to open it again. My fingers hovered above the black book, trembling, the carved words return. What was taken glowing faintly as if alive. My heart pounded so loud it drowned the whispers for a moment. I felt the weight of a choice pressing on me, either open it and surrender to whatever it demanded or leave it closed and be devoured by the shifting madness of the library. I swallowed hard, my throat raw, my body weak, and finally with shaking hands I opened the book. The pages erupted in a storm of ink, dark rivers spilling outward. Not across the paper, but into the air itself, the shapes of words breaking free. Sentences unraveling like threads, each letter twisting into symbols that glowed faintly before dissolving into mist. The voices grew louder, no longer whispers, but screams of triumph. The air pressed down heavy as though the ceiling itself were collapsing. I stumbled back, the ink swirling around me, clinging to my skin, burning cold. The words flew past my eyes, phrases written in languages I did not know yet. Somehow understood, they demanded the accused. They wept, they blamed each one, crying for something stolen, taken. Silence, the ink formed faces for brief seconds. Mouths open in agony, eyes hollow, before collapsing again into liquid smoke. I shouted, "I did not take you. I only read." But the library shook violently, as if rejecting my plea. Shelves snapping open, books tearing themselves apart, their pages joining the maelstrom overhead. I ran, but the ink followed, wrapping around my arms, pulling me back toward the lectern. The book pulsed brighter, the words shifting now from return, what was taken to new command, become what you stole. I felt my chest tighten, a sharp pain spearing through me. My breath stolen, my vision, a dimming the ink forced its way into my mouth, down my throat, into my lungs, filling me until I gagged, choking on words I could not speak. They carved themselves across my skin, invisible flames etching ancient letters, my body no longer mine. The voices screamed in ecstasy and horror, blending into one impossible sound. I fell to my knees, my body convulsing, the ink burning through my veins. I clawed at my chest, desperate to rip it out. But the transformation pressed on the shelves around me, bent inward. The chandeliers shattered, raining shards that never touched the ground, suspended in the air. The clock above the hall struck once, though its hands never moved. The sound reverberated through my bones, shaking my teeth loose. Then silence, absolute silence like before, but deeper, crushing, suffocating. I looked down, and the book was gone, replaced by nothing but ash in my hands. Yet the voices were no longer outside. They were inside my skull, crawling through my thoughts, whispering, screaming, chanting. I staggered to my feet, stumbling through the frozen hall. But now every shelf, every wall, every floor tile pulsed with faint light, breathing in rhythm with me as if the entire library were my body. I reached the glass doors once more, and this time they swung open without effort. The world beyond lay still, but not the world. I knew the night sky was ink black without stars, the campus buildings twisted like the shelves had been in their windows, blank and hollow. I stepped out onto the steps, my legs trembling, and realized the voices inside me had fallen silent. Waiting, listening, I whispered to myself, I am free. But the words echoed back in 100 different voices, all my own layered, distorted wrong. My reflection in the glass door stared back. Not my face, but a blur of shifting words, ink dripping from empty eyes. The truth hit me with brutal clarity. I had not escaped. I had not freed myself. I had become the vessel, the cage the library had chosen. The silence broke, the whispers returned, but this time they came from my own mouth, spilling endlessly. Even as I tried to clamp it shut, words ancient and terrible pouring out into the night, carried on a wind that smelled of dust and rot. I tried to scream for help, but only more voices escaped, countless, and unending the library had given them back. But through me, I stumbled into the courtyard, collapsing to my knees as the voices grew louder, filling the air like a storm, windows shattering, lamps bursting the sky above, swirling as if the stars themselves had fled from the sound. I covered my ears, but it made no difference. The noise was inside me, tearing me apart from within. I looked toward the library, its windows glowing faintly, in rhythm with my heartbeat. The building alive, watching, waiting. And then I understood the twist of it all. The library had never wanted to keep me. It wanted me to leave, to walk into the world carrying the voices it had imprisoned for centuries, to spread them beyond its walls so they could grow and multiply. I was not the victim, I was the key. I collapsed to the ground, the voices screaming through me, unstoppable, my body breaking piece by piece, until all that was left was the endless flood of words spilling out into the night, infecting the silence of the world around me. The last thing I saw before my vision dissolved into black was the clock within the library striking once more, though it was still frozen at 1 minute past midnight, and in that endless moment, I knew that midnight would never end. It would stretch forever, carried by the voices I had become.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the terror, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to C&T Horror Stories for more chilling tales. Stay spooky.